responsibility. Last topic for today is responsibility accounting. The objective of responsibility accounting is the proper evaluation of responsibility centers. Okay, so the objective of responsibility accounting is the proper evaluation of responsibility centers. Sir, ano ba yung mga responsibility centers? So in a company, responsibility centers are the divisions, departments, branches, and segments of a company. Okay, and responsibility centers are headed by managers. So basically, yung mga managers, they have the overall authority over the responsibility centers. Now, ang key concept in responsibility accounting, so remember this, is the concept of controllability. Okay? So babalikan natin ito lagi yung controllability. So ano ibig sabihin yan? Ibig sabihin yan, class, we evaluate managers based only on the factors they can control. Okay? So yun yung overall concept ng responsibility accounting. Ulitin ko we only evaluate managers based on the factors they can control. Now, there are 4 types of responsibility centers: cost center, revenue center, profit center, and investment center. Okay, so isa natin, class. Yung cost center, yung manager is only responsible for cost. Okay? Revenue center, the manager is responsible only on revenues. For profit center naman, the manager is responsible both for revenues and costs. Investment center naman, the manager is responsible for revenues, cost, and investment. Obviously, yung investment center, siya yung may broadest power, okay, among the responsibility centers. Okay? So isa-isa natin, class. Doon ba tayo sa cost center? Ano ba mga example niyan, sir? For example, class, yung maintenance department ng isang company. Okay, ano pa? Maintenance, IT, okay, department, HR department, payroll department, production. Ayan, example yan ng cost center. Ibig sabihin, nag-i-incur lang sila ng cost. Huwag mo i-expect na mag-generate ng revenues yan. Okay? So that's why, kailangan i-evaluate natin sila based only on costs. Okay? Yun yung controllability. So wala silang control sa revenues. Ang may control lang sila is costs. That's why we evaluate them based on costs. Gets? Okay, now, ang magandang evaluation dyan is variance analysis. Okay, pwede yung variance analysis. So wherein, compare natin yung actual cost versus standard. Okay, which we discussed previously. May separate lesson tayo for variance analysis. Okay, let's go to revenue center. So again, revenue center, manager responsible lang sa revenue. So pinakamagandang example dito is the sales department. Ano pa? Marketing department. Okay, sales department and marketing department, example siya ng revenue centers. Now, wala silang control over the costs. Revenues lang. So therefore, evaluate natin sila based on revenues. Yun yung concept of controllability. Okay? Well, actually, pwede rin variance analysis yan. Ang compare naman natin, class, is the actual revenues na na-generate ng sales department and marketing department versus yung target revenues ng company. Okay? So, pwede rin variance analysis. Alright? Now, let's go to profit center. Profit center, obviously, meron kang revenues and meron kang cost. So, ano ba magandang example ng profit center? For example, class, SM malls. Okay, mga malls. SM department store. Ano pa? Nasa SM. SM department store, supermarket, SM cinema. Okay? So, bakit yun yung mga examples mo? For example, profit center, ibig sabihin meron silang control over revenues and costs. Yung department store, nagbebenta sila. Sila in charge sa pricing. So, revenue yun. Siyempre, may mga cost din sila. Papasweldo sila sa mga cashier, mga ganyan. Also, for supermarket and cinema. Okay? So, meron silang control sa revenues and meron silang control over the cost. Tawag natin doon, profit centers. Now, for profit centers, class, ini-evaluate naman natin sila based on the controllable profit margin. Sir, paano namin kukompute yung controllable profit margins? Remember this. For profit centers, ganito yung evaluation. Sales minus variable cost minus controllable fixed cost. Okay? You get your controllable profit margin. Okay, so ulitin ko, yung profit centers, we evaluate them based on the controllable profit margin. Sales minus variable cost minus controllable fixed cost, you get the controllable profit margin. Plus, actually, yung controllable fixed cost na yan, kung maalala nyo yung discussion natin sa incremental analysis, yung relevant costing, same concept yan dun sa avoidable fixed cost. Okay? Same yan sa controllable. Wherein, sa incremental analysis, lahat ng unavoidable, hindi natin kino-consider. Okay? For example, yung mga allocated overhead, depreciation, advertising, dapat wala dito yan. Kasi wala namang control dun si manager. Okay? So again, babalik lang tayo dun sa concept of controllability. Okay? So later, i-apply natin yan. So cost center, variance analysis. Revenue center, variance analysis din yan. Profit center is the controllable profit margin. And let's go to investment center. Sir, ano ba example ng investment center? Kanina meron tayong SM department store, supermarket, and cinema. This one, siguro sabihin natin na head office of SM. Okay? Head office ng SM, basically, well, sila magde-decide kung saang location sila mag-put up ng malls. Okay? So, meron ilan in charge sila sa investment. Okay? So, sila in charge sa investment, syempre may revenues din yun, magpapalist sila sa mga tenants, and mag-incur sila ng cost. So, ayan, head office ng SM is an example of investment center. Now, actually, yung magiging discussion natin, mas focus tayo on investment center kasi yan yung medyo mas complicated compared to the first three. Okay? Now, for investment center, meron tayong 3 performance measures. Okay, so last part na to, class. Tatlo tandaan nyo. Number 1. First nating class is return on investment or ROI. Number 2, we have the residual income. Okay, residual income. And number 3 is the economic value added or EVA. Okay, economic value added or EVA. So leading ko. Investment centers, meron tayong 3 performance measures. Return on investment or ROI, residual income, and economic value added or EVA. Now, mahalaga alam natin kung paano i-compute yan. Mag-start muna tayo with ROI. ROI is computed as operating income over average operating assets. Okay? So, operating income over average operating assets. Ito yung mga kailangan nyo tandaan. Pag sinabing operating income, this is income before interest and taxes. Income before interest and taxes. Ibig sabihin, before natin i-consider interest and taxes. Bakit, sir? Bakit hindi net income yan? Bakit operating income? Because yung mga managers natin, wala silang control over the interest and taxes. Babalik ulit tayo sa concept of controllability. Okay? Kaya ang mas maganda is operating income rather than net income. Well, obviously, kapag sa problem, wala namang sinabing, pag net income yung given, okay? Wala sinabing operating income, kung ano yung given sa problem, yun gamitin mo. Pero pag mako-compute mo yung operating income, gamitin mo yung operating income. Ulitin ko, bakit operating income? Because yung managers, wala silang control over interest and taxes. Next, pag sinabing average, beginning balance plus ending balance over 2. Okay, di ba? Ganda mag-compute ng average. Beginning plus ending over 2. Okay, average operating assets. Sir, ano ibig sabihin ng operating assets? Ito yung invested assets or capital. Okay? For example, nag-invest ng land, ng building, o yung SM example natin, nag-invest ng land, ng building, ng equipment. Ayan, yun yung mga example ng invested assets or invested capital. Okay, yun yung ibig sabihin ng operating assets, yung in-invest natin. Okay, and take note class na yung operating assets na yan at book value. Okay, book value yung gagamitin natin. So, ulitin ko. Sa formula natin, operating income over average operating assets. Ano yung mga kailangan mo tandaan? Operating income, ibig sabihin nun, income before interest and taxes. Before pa natin i-minus yung interest and taxes. Pag average, beginning plus ending, over 2. Operating assets, ibang tawag dyan, invested assets or invested capital, lahat ng invest natin for that particular investment. Book value yung gagamitin mo, hindi market value. Okay, next. Don't worry class, later i-apply natin lahat yan. So, sulat mo muna. Residual income. Kaya siya tinawag na residual because ganito yung formula niya. Operating income minus average operating assets times minimum rate of return. Okay. Analyze natin yung formula. Residual income is equal to operating income minus average operating assets times minimum rate of return. As you notice, operating income to is ROI, operating income din yan. So same lang sila, income before interest and taxes. Average operating assets operating assets din yan. Same lang. Dito lang sila nagkaiba. Minimum rate of return, saan ibig sabihin yan? Kasi ito yung required return or ito yung acceptable return for the company. Okay? For example, nag-invest tayo. Ang policy ng company is 10% return. Yun yung minimum, okay? Yun yung acceptable return sa company. Siyempre, gusto natin yung investment natin is more than the minimum return. It is measured by the residual income. Siyempre, mas mataas yung operating income natin, much better. Okay? Yun yung mas gusto natin. Okay, so, last one. Economic value added. Sir, ano naman yung formula ng economic value added? Operating income after tax, okay, minus average operating assets times weighted average cost of capital or WACC. Ulitin ko ha. Pag sabi economic value added, operating income after tax minus average operating assets times WACC. Analyze natin yung formula. Sir, operating income din yan, so same pala yan. Okay, sa ROI and residual income. Ang difference sila, dito kino-consider mo na yung tax. After tax na siya. Ito before tax, tama? Before interest and taxes. Ito after tax. Pero before interest. Okay? Next, average operating assets. For ROI and residual income, pareho yan at book value. Okay? Ang maganda sa economic value added, at market value yan. So, kino-consider mo na yung market value ng in-invest mo na assets. Okay? Ano yung WACC or weighted average cost of capital? Actually, ito rin yan. Minimum rate of return din yan. Ito din yung required return or yung acceptable return sa company. Class, meron tayong separate session para sa cost of capital or yung weighted average cost of capital. Next time natin i-discuss yung details. But basically, pag WACC, ibig sabihin lang nun, yun yung minimum return or acceptable return sa company. Gusto natin mas mataas sa WACC yung ma-generate natin na returns. Okay, so ayan. Ito pa pala, last one. Ito, last one na to ha. Yung average operating assets na yung class, minsan hindi yan given sa IVA. Okay, may different computation yan. Total assets minus current liability. Okay? Total assets minus current liability, yun din yung alternative computation sa average operating assets for IVA. Sir, paano namin matatandaan yung total assets minus current liability? Parang walang sense yung formula niyan, sir. Okay, so dito ko lalagay class ha. Tignan mo to ha. So total assets minus current liability, pwede mo siyang isipin as, para matandaan mo siya. Pwede mo siyang isipin as ganito, di ba? Ang account equation natin, assets equal to liabilities plus equity. Tama? Ngayon, yung liabilities mo, meron kang current liabilities and meron kang non-current liabilities. So pag minus mo yung current liabilities, ang matitira na sa'yo yung non-current and yung equity mo. Ibig sabihin class, yung IVA, ang focus niya is on long-term capital. Okay? Or yung long-term assets. Okay? Kaya mo tinatanggal yung current liabilities. So tandaan nyo lang yung formula. Sa IVA, either ang given sa'yo average operating assets, walang problema yun. Pag given sa'yo total assets and merong current liabilities, i-minus mo lang, yun din yung alternative computation for average operating assets. Okay? Ibig sabihin ng total assets minus current liability, it means ang focus ng IVA is more of long-term capital. Okay? So yeah, so yan yung overview. Actually, yun natatanda mo sa responsibility accounting. Let's go to our handouts. Doon muna tayo sa problem solving class ha. Problem solving number 1. Mamaya na yung theory. Number 1. Okay. First question sa atin is B's segment profit margin. Ito, parang kanina. Profit margin. Okay? And then, number 2, profit margin controllable by C. Ayan, so basically, yung problem number 1 natin is profit center. Okay, let's go to number 1. The following information was taken from the segmented income statement of Jeric and the company's 3 divisions. Okay, Jeric Inc., yun yung company. Meron siyang divisions, A division, B, and C. Ito yung mga responsibility centers. Okay? So, meron yung revenues, variable operating expenses, controllable fixed expenses, and non-controllable. Okay? Ano yung relevant sa atin? Well, syempre, mas gusto natin. Ang relevant sa atin is the controllable. Yung kasi yung mga non-controllable, obviously, walang control dyan si manager. So, dapat hindi tayo evaluate based on the uncontrollable factors. Okay? In addition, the company incurred common fixed cost of 18,000. Ano yung common fixed cost? Uncontrollable yan. Yan yung parang allocated cost. Okay? So, sige. Let's go to question 1. So, number 1, question 1. B's segment profit margin. Okay. Punta tayo kay B. Meron siyang revenues. Revenues, 235,000. Minus variable cost na 120,000. Minus controllable, C na lang. Controllable fixed cost, which is 75,000. And then, ima-minus mo ba yung non-controllable fixed cost? Actually, ima-minus mo yan. Okay? Kasi ang tanong sa atin is profit margin. Hindi naman sinabi na controllable profit margin. Yung question number 2 nakalagay, the profit margin controllable by C. Pag sinabing controllable by C, doon mo lang hindi ima-minus yung non-controllable fixed cost. Okay? So, in this case, non-controllable fixed cost, ima-minus din natin yan, which is 20,000. Okay? So, sagot natin dyan, 235,000 minus 120,000 minus 75,000 minus 20, you get 20,000. Ang tawag natin dito, class, is the profit margin. Letter C yung sagot natin for question number 1. Pero take note, ang mas tamang evaluation is revenues minus variable cost minus controllable fixed cost. Okay, sagutin natin yung question number 2. Question number 2, the profit margin controllable by C. So, punta tayo kay C division. Meron tayong revenues, which is 325,000. We have variable cost, 180,000. And then, we have controllable fixed cost, which is 70,000. Let's compute for the controllable profit margin. 325,000 minus 180,000 minus 70,000, you get 75,000. Sagot natin dito, class, 75,000, letter D or dog for question number 2. So, class, ano yung mas magandang evaluation tool? Controllable profit margin or profit margin? Siyempre, yung controllable profit margin. Kasi hindi natin kinonsider yung uncontrollable fixed cost, which is, sa managers, wala silang control doon. So, dapat hindi mo sila i-evaluate doon. So, again, babalik lang tayo sa overall concept ng responsibility accounting, which is controllability. Let's go to question number 3. Assuming use of a responsibility accounting system, which of the following should be used to evaluate the performance of A division? Punta kay A. So, alam natin, class, meron yung revenue sa 200,000 minus variable cost of 110. And syempre, minus mo yung controllable fixed cost na 65,000. Huwag mo i-minus yung uncontrollable kasi ang sabi dyan, which of the following should be used to evaluate the performance? Dapat lahat ng factors na may control si A division. 200,000 minus 110 minus 65,000, you get 25,000, which is letter D or dog. Ang tawag natin dyan, controllable profit margin. Okay? Question number 4. Which of the following amount should be used to evaluate whether it should continue to invest, okay, company resources in Division A? Okay, ganito gagawin ko dyan. Okay, Division A naman, revenues, which is 200,000, variable cost, which is 110, okay, controllable fixed cost na 65, and then, ima-minus mo yung non-controllable fixed cost na 15,000. So, tingnan natin, class. So 200 minus 110 minus 65 minus 15, you get 10,000. Yung profit margin natin dito is 10,000. Alright? Sagot mo dyan is letter C. Sir, bakit 10,000 yung sagot mo dyan? Kasi class, ang sabi dyan, whether it should continue to invest company resources, pwede mo siyang isipin na parang ROI. Okay? Di ba yung ROI natin is operating income, which is your profit margin. Kapag ang pinag-uusapan mo na is investment or investment center, ang focus mo na is operating income. Operating income basically is your revenues minus lahat ng cost mo. So revenues minus all the costs, you have your profit margin or operating income. Yun yung magiging basis natin para sa investment center. Okay? Letter C for question number 4. Basically, question number 4 is investment center. Gets? Okay. Ulitin ko, pag segment, yung ina-analyze natin, controllable profit margin. Pag yung investment ang ina-analyze mo, profit margin or operating income. Okay? So very important, kailan mo isasama yung uncontrollable fixed cost versus hindi mo siya isasama. Okay? So ganun yung making analysis mo dyan. Okay, so these are your answers for problem number 1. Let's go to problem number 2. Okay, problem number 2. What is the division segment income or operating income, segment income? Okay, so tingnan natin class. The division of Tiffany Company had the following financial data for the year. Assets available for use, 1 million book value, 1.5 million market value. Residual income, 100,000 and ROI, 15%. Okay, how much daw yung segment income or how much yung operating income? Okay, so ang gagawin ko dyan class, ROI yung gagamitin ko. So, for question number 1, given sa atin yung ROI, tama? So, ang formula natin ng ROI is operating income over average operating assets. Right? So, ang tinatanong is operating income or the segment income. Now, given sa atin yung ROI, 15%. 15% is equal to operating income plus ano yung gagamitin mong average operating assets? Book value or market value? It should be book value. Ayan, hinighlight ko kanina. At book value dapat kapag operating income. Okay? So, in this case, 1 million dapat yan. So, let's solve for operating income. 1 million times 15%. That is 150,000. Sagot natin dyan, class. So, question number 1 is 150,000. So, basically, alam natin yung formula ng ROI. From there, na-compute natin kung how much yung operating income or segment income. So yeah, let's go to question number 2. What is the target rate of return? Yung target rate of return, yun din yung minimum rate of return. Ano ulit yun? Yun yung acceptable sa atin. Yun yung minimum, mas gusto natin, mas mataas dun yung ma-reach natin. Okay? So, gagawin ko dyan. Residual income naman yung gagamitin ko. So, question number 2. So, basically, meron tayong residual income is equal to operating income minus average operating assets times minimum rate of return. Yung minimum rate of return, R na lang gagamitin natin, no? Rate times R. Okay, so ang hinahanap sa ating class, how much daw yung R na yan? Okay? So, residual income natin from the problem, ang given siya, 100,000. So, 100,000 is equal to, na-compute natin yung operating income from question number 1, 150,000, minus, how much yung average operating assets natin at book value or market value. Ulitin ko, kapag ROI and residual income, pareho yan, book value yung gagamitin natin. So, 1 million times R. Magso-solve for R lang tayo. So, 100,000. Okay. So, gagawin ko dyan. Yung R natin, 100,000. So, lipat mo dito yan. R natin is equal to, so gagawin ko dyan class, 150 minus 100, you have 50,000. Tama, sa algebra. And then, i-divide natin by 1 million. Okay, so ganyan yung ma-compute natin yung R. Alright? So, ayan. So, ayan. Pahabain natin para pakita ko yung details para naman mas malinaw. Okay, so 100,000 is equal to 150,000 minus 1 million R. Ganyan yan, tama? So, ibig sabihin, R natin is equal to 150 minus 100, 50,000 over 1 million. Ayun. So, 50,000 divided by 1 million, you get 5%. So, sagot natin dito, class. So, question number 2 is 5%, letter D or dog. So, yung 5% yun yung minimum rate of return. Mas gusto natin, mas mataas yung return. Mas mataas sa 5% yung ma-generate natin. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, class, the higher the residual income, the better. So, gusto natin mataas to. Gusto rin natin mataas yung ROI. Gusto rin natin mataas yung economic value added. Okay, let's go to question number 3. If the manager of B division is evaluated based on ROI, how much would she be willing to pay for an investment that promises to increase net segment income by 50,000? So alam natin yung formula ng ROI. So dapat master na master yung formula sa to, ha? Okay, so ROI is equal to operating income over average operating assets. So how much daw yung, anong tanong dyan, how much should she be willing to pay for an investment? So ibig sabihin, how much yung average operating assets? Yun yung hinahanap sa atin. Okay, so ROI natin is 15%, which is, ito, nasa given siya. 15% is equal to operating income daw, mag-i-increase ng 50,000. And tinatanong sa atin, how much yung average operating assets? So gagawin ko lang dyan, average operating assets. So 50,000, divide ko lang by 15%. 50,000 divided by 0.15, you get 333,000 3, 3, 3. Answer natin class, letter boy for question number 3. Okay. So, actually, simple lang yung computation sa responsibility accounting. Dapat lang, alam na alam mo yung formulas, especially for investment center. Okay? Let's go to number 3. Amida Corporation has established a target rate of return of 16%, which is the minimum rate of return. For the most recent year, Division D generated sales of 10 million, expenses of 7.5, total assets at the beginning 5 million, and total assets at the end 7 million. Okay, question number 1. What was Division D's residual income? Apply ko lang yan. So number 3, question 1. Residual income is operating income minus average operating assets times yung minimum rate of return. Okay, R na lang. How much daw yung residual income? Class, compute natin yung operating income. Well, we have sales na 10 million minus 7.5 million expenses. So meron tayong 2.5 million. Okay, ito yung sinasabi ko. Wala naman sinabing interest, wala sinabing taxes. Therefore, kung ano yung sales minus expenses, yun na yung operating income. Okay? So, kung net income yung given, tapos walang sinabing interest and taxes, assume mo na wala talagang interest and taxes. So, gagamitin mo yung net income. Right? Next. How much yung average operating assets natin? Beginning plus ending divided by 2. Ano yung beginning natin? 5 billion plus 7 million divided by 2. Okay? So, you have 6 million. 6 million, minimum rate of return in the problem is 16%. Okay? So, let's compute for residual income. 6 million times 16% minus 2.5 million, you get 1,540,000. That is letter C. Okay? For question number 1, 1,540,000. Let's go to question number 2. For the most recent year, what was Division D's return on investment, ROI, is equal to operating income over average operating assets. Okay, so gagawin ko lang dito, ROI is equal to how much yung operating income natin? 2.5 million. Average operating assets natin is 6 million as computed earlier. So 2.5 million divided by 6 million, you get 41.67%. That is letter C. Okay, 41.67%. Easy. Okay, nakadali. Sige, so mag-jump tayo class, no? From mamaya, balikan natin yung question number 4. Doon tayo sa question or problem number 6. Problem 6 muna tayo para mas maganda yung flow ng discussion natin. Okay, jump tayo sa problem number 6. Babalikan natin yung problem number 4 later. Okay, so erase ko lang to para may space tayo. So let's read problem number 6. The information below relates to cost, revenues, and assets anticipated in B division. Okay, sige. We have sales, 4 million, variable cost, 75%, and then average assets, 12 million, fixed cost, 0. Sige nga, class, computing natin yung operating income dyan. So sa number 6, we have sales na 4 million, variable cost natin 75%. So how much yun? 4 million times 75%, 3 million. Okay, 3 million. Fixed cost is 0. Therefore, operating income natin is 1 million. Tama? So, compute natin yung operating income. How would each of the following measures be affected? It sales by 5,000 in the B division. Now, nakalagay dyan, ROI. Well, alam natin yung ROI, yung formula dyan. Pero may nakalagay na asset turnover and profit margin. Para saan yan, sir? Okay, so may konting discussion muna tayo. Ang tawag natin dyan, class, is the DuPont formula. Okay, I think si DuPont is siya yung naka-discover nito. Okay, so pinangalan sa kanya. DuPont formula. Basically, yung DuPont formula is the expansion of the formula for ROI. Ano ulit class yung formula natin for ROI? ROI is equal to, you have your operating income over average operating assets. Assets na lagay natin. Okay, now, pwede mo i-expand yung formula na yan. Dalawa, yung factors yan. Yung una is the asset turnover. Ano yung formula sa asset turnover? Tanda mo, aralin natin ito sa FS analysis. Pero pag sinabing turnover, sulat mo dyan ha, pag sinabing turnover, sales yung numerator mo doon. Okay, tanda mo yan ha? So yung DuPont formula, i-expand natin yung ROI. So, asset turnover times profit margin. Ano yung asset turnover? Sales over assets. Tanda mo, basta may word na turnover, kahit anong formula yan, sigurado sales yung numerator mo. Profit margin naman, operating income over sales. Okay, or net profit margin, parang ganun. Operating income over sales. Okay, so ito yung asset turnover, sales over assets, profit margin, operating income over sales. Now, tingnan mo to class ha. Pag multiply mo yan, cancelled out to. Pareho yan, tama? Numerator sales, denominator sales. Ibig sabihin na matitira sa'yo is operating income over assets. So matitira sa'yo dyan, operating income over assets, which is our formula for ROI. Nakuha niyo yan? So ang gusto lang sabihin ni DuPont, okay, ang gusto lang niya sabihin, okay, pag breakdown mo yung formula ng ROI into asset turnover, pwede mo siya i-breakdown into asset turnover and profit margin. Ibig sabihin, both asset turnover and profit margin contribute to the ROI. So dapat ang maging objective ng company, i-increase yung asset turnover and i-increase yung profit margin. Yun lang ibig sabihin ng DuPont formula. Okay. Now, ang question dito, how would each of the following measures be affected if sales rise by 5,000? Pag tumaas yung sales, ano mangyayari sa ROI natin? Well, pag tumaas yung sales, tama ba sa formula natin, pag tumaas yung sales, tataas yung operating income mo. Tama? Walang FX assets. Therefore, yung ROI natin is mag-increase. So, increase tayo. Okay, doon naman tayo sa asset turnover. Ano yung formula sa asset turnover? Sales over assets. Pag tumaas yung sales natin by 5,000, obviously, tataas yung asset turnover natin. Kasi wala namang effect sa denominator eh. Next natin is profit margin. Ano yung formula sa profit margin? Operating income over sales. So pag tumaas yung sales natin by 5,000, well, tataas yung operating income mo by 5,000. Tataas din yung sales mo by 5,000. So ano sagot mo dyan? Increase or decrease or no change? Well, pareho silang tataas ng 5,000. Walang change yan. Okay? So no change ang sagot natin dyan. Okay, so let's answer. How would each of the following measures be affected if sales rise by 5,000? Based on the formulas, ito yung sagot natin. ROI mag-i-increase, asset turnover mag-i-increase, yung profit margin, walang difference. Actually, pwede natin, itong profit margin para ma-prove ko sa inyo na walang change yan, pwede tayo mag-assume ng amount. Diba? Ito yung original given natin. Okay, so yung profit margin natin dito, 1 million divided by 4 million. Tama? 1 divided by 4 is 25%. 25%, okay? So, pag yung 4 million mo nag-increase ng 5,000, so 4 million 5,000, and then yung operating income mo magiging 1 million, hindi. So, 4 million 5,000 yung sales mo, yung variable cost mo dyan is 75%, okay? 4 million 5,000 times 75%, you get 3,003,750, alright? Minus 4 million 5,000, yung operating income mo dyan magiging 1,001,250. I-divide mo to, 1,001,250 divided by 4 million 5,000, you also get 25%. O, pinakita ko lang class ha. Pinove ko lang na before and after, 25% pa rin yung profit margin natin. Okay? So, sagot natin dito is letter C, increase, and no change. Now, balik tayo sa problem number 4. Related kasi dito yan. Okay, problem number 4. The following information pertains to Christopher Corporation. Meron tayong sales, gross margin, income, and invested capital or invested assets. Imputed interest is 8%. Yung imputed interest, yun lang yung minimum rate of return natin. Okay, yun lang ibig sabihin nun. Question number 1, how much daw yung capital turnover? Yung capital turnover, yun lang yung other name for asset turnover. Kasi yung asset and capital, interchangeably ginagamit yan. So kanina, para sinabi ko dito, yung average operating assets mo, tawag dyan, invested assets or invested capital. Okay, yung capital and assets, interchangeably pwede mong gamitin. So, ibig sabihin ng capital turnover, asset turnover, which is sales over asset. Tama? Asset turnover is equal to sales over assets. So, computin natin class. Ano yung sales natin? How much in the problem? 1.5 million. How much yung assets natin? Or the invested capital? 450,000. O 1.5 million. Divide by 450,000, you get 3.33. So, dito class, for question number 1 is letter A, 3.33. Question number 2, how much yung sales margin? Yung sales margin mo class, it's also your profit margin. Same lang sila ng ibig sabihin. Okay, so take 2 mo na lang yun. Sales margin is also the same as profit margin. So, paano yung computed? Profit margin natin is operating income over sales. How much yung operating income natin dyan? 90,000. How much yung sales? 1.5 million. Okay, so 90,000 divided by 1.5 million, you get 6%. Sagot mo dito class, letter A, 6%. Okay, that's your profit margin. Let's go to question number 3. How much is the ROI? Okay, question number 3, ROI. ROI is operating income over average operating assets. Operating income natin in the problem is 90,000 and average assets natin is 450,000. Computin natin class, 90,000. Divide by 450,000, you get 20%. Okay, sagot natin for question number 3 is letter C, 20%. Now, sabi ko kanina sa DuPont formula, yung ROI natin, pwede mo ring i-analyze yan by multiplying asset turnover and profit margin. So, ibig sabihin, pag minultiply natin yung sagot natin sa question number 1, asset turnover mo is 3.33, profit margin mo is 6%. Okay, so sige nga, 6 times 3.33, you get 20%, which is our answer dito sa question number 3. Gets ba yan? So, sagot mo sa question 1, multiply mo sa question number 2, or asset turnover times profit margin, that should be equal to your ROI. Ngayon, sakto. Okay, so ganun na siya. DuPont formula. Number 4, how much is the residual income? Okay, so residual income is equal to operating income minus average operating assets times minimum rate of return. Okay, so operating income natin dito is 90,000 given siya sa problem. Assets natin or capital, ulitin ko, assets and capital, interchangeably ginagamit yan. 450,000. Minimum rate of return is 8%. Okay, so computin natin. 450,000 times 8% minus 90,000, you get 54,000. Residual income natin, 54,000. Letter dog. Oh, 54,000. Okay, so I think last item na tayo for the problem solving. Oh, ganun lang kadali. Well, ayan, tama. For dito sa investment center. Okay, let's go to number 7, no? Problem number 7. Sige. So for problem number 7, yung ating class, ha? Okay. Let's go to, tama ba? So number 4, number 5, hindi pala, number 5 pala tayo. Number 5. Okay, so number 5, EVA naman to. EVA, paano ulit yun? Operating income after tax minus average operating assets times weighted average cost of capital. Okay. Number 5, see division of May company as the following statistics for its most recent operations. Assets available for use, meron tayong market value and meron tayong book value. Pag iba, market value yung gagamitin mo. Okay? Pag ROI and residual income, book value lagi yan. Sige. So, gagamitin natin is the market value. Okay. ROI 25%, residual income 200,000, ROI ng entire company 20%. Okay. Compute the EVA assuming cost of capital is 10% and tax rate is 40%. Sir, bakit may tax rate? Kasi dapat after tax, operating income after tax. Ganito gagawin ko, class. Tingnan nyo mabuti ha, sa number 5, question number 1. EVA, ang computation niyan, yung EVA natin is equal to operating income after tax minus average assets, average operating assets, times weighted average cost of capital. Okay? Yan yung formula. Now, kailangan natin malaman yung operating income after tax. Paano natin kukumpitin yan, sir? Nakita mo ba, class, yung meron tayong ROI? Tama? So, may ROI tayo ng 25%. From ROI, makukompute ko yung operating income dyan. So, ganito gagawin ko, class. So, yung ROI ko is, well, nakalagay dyan 25%. Tama? Paano ba kumpitin yung ROI? Operating income over average operating assets. Sabi dyan, yung ROI is 25%. Siyempre, yung sa division lang, huwag mo gagamitin yung ROI ng buong company. Again, ang ina-analyze mo yung managers, okay? Per division or per responsibility center. Operating income natin, hinahanap natin yan. Average operating assets, alam natin sa ROI, book value yung gagamitin mo. So, 2 million. Therefore, yung operating income natin is 2 million times 25%. Okay? 500,000. Kaya lang, hindi ito yung gagamitin mo para dito sa EVA. Kasi nakalagay dyan, after tax. So, yung 500,000, tatanggalin mo pa yung tax dyan. How much yung tax rate? 40%. Paano mo tatanggalin yung 40%? Edi multiply mo sa 60%. Okay? 500,000, multiply mo sa 0.6, you get 300,000. Ano yung 300,000? Yun na yung operating income after tax. Gets? Okay. So, 300,000 minus how much yung average operating assets? Siyempre, market value yung gagamitin natin. 3.6 million. And weighted average cost of capital or yung minimum return is 10%. Okay? So, 3.6 million times 10%, minus natin yung 300,000. Sagot mo dyan, yung EVA natin is 60,000. Actually, negative. Tama? Negative yan? O, negative 60,000. So, ibig sabihin, hindi magandang investment yan, negative. Gusto natin mas mataas yung EVA. Okay? So, letter D yung sagot mo dyan. That's 60,000. What is the target rate of return? O, ganito naman gagawin ko dyan sa question number 2. Question number 2, target rate of return or the minimum rate of return, residual income yung gagamitin ko dyan. Residual income is equal to operating income minus average operating assets times yung return. Okay, ganyan yung formula. Ang tinatanong sa atin, how much do yung R? Okay, so yung residual income natin in the problem is given siya 200,000. 200,000 is equal to operating income natin. Ano kasi yung gagamitin mo? Yung 500 or yung 300 para dun sa operating income? Siyempre yung 500. Okay? Yung after tax, ginagamit mo lang yan sa EVA. Pag ROI and residual income, before tax yan. Okay? So 500 yung gagamitin mo dito. 500,000 and book value dapat yung average operating assets mo, which is 2 million times R. Okay? So computing natin yung R. Gagawin ko dyan, 500 minus 200,000, so that's 300,000. I-divide ko siya by 2 million. R natin dito is 15%. Okay? So ang ginawa ko, class, 500 minus, minus pala to, minus 200 is 300,000. So 300,000 divided by 2 million, yung minimum rate of return natin is 15%. Sagot natin for question number 2 is letter C, 15%. Okay? So ayan. Different concept na yung problem number 7 or 8. So later, babalikan natin yun. Pumunta muna tayo sa theory questions. Okay? Theory questions. So far, natapos na natin yung hanggang problem number 6. So yung 7, mamaya na yan. Okay, theory muna tayo. Let's go to theory number 1. Okay, what term identifies an accounting system in which the operations of the business are broken down into segments and the control function of a person, sales manager, etc. Tawag natin dyan, A, responsibility accounting. Number 2, when managers of subunits throughout an organization strive to achieve the goals set by top management, the result is, we call it goal congruence. Ibig sabihin ng goal congruence, class, we make sure sa responsibility accounting na lahat ng managers for each responsibility center, ang goal nila is to reach the overall objective of the entire company. Hindi lang yung division or department nila, dapat buong company yan, which is to maximize net income. So tawag natin doon, goal congruence, letter A. Number 3, a management decision may be beneficial for a given profit center, but not for the entire company. This decision would lead to sub-optimization, letter C. Iyon naman yung opposite ng goal congruence. Kapag selfish yung mga responsibility center, gusto nila sila lang yung maganda yung performance. And kahit masacrifice yung buong company at the expense of the whole company, sub-optimization yun. Okay? Which is the opposite of goal congruence. Again, ang objective natin sa responsibility accounting is goal congruence or to reach the overall objective of the company. Number 4, so C tayo for number 3. Number 4, the cost object under the control of a manager is called a, letter C, responsibility center. Number 5, which of the following is not an example of responsibility center? Cost center, yes. Revenue center, yes. Profit center, yes. Investment center, yes. Contribution center, no. Letter E for number 5. Number 6, a manufacturer's raw material purchasing department would likely be classified as, well, yung purchasing department, obviously, gumagastos lang sila. Per-purchase lang sila. Therefore, cost center yan. Tama? So, letter A yung sagot natin dyan, cost center. Number 7, if the head of a hotel's food and beverage operation is held accountable for revenues and costs. Revenues and costs, ang tawag natin doon, profit center, letter C. Number 8, decentralized firms can delegate authority by structuring organization into responsibility centers. Which of the following is most likely a totally independent standalone business? Well, investment center yan kasi responsible siya sa investment, revenues and costs, so standalone siya. Tama? Letter D, investment center. Number 9, a responsibility center in which the company manager is held accountable for the profitable use of assets or capital, and capital is known as investment center. Okay, letter D, investment center. Number 10, of most relevance in deciding how or which cost should be assigned to the responsibility center is the degree of controllability, letter BOY. So, ang magandang example niyan, syempre, yung fixed cost, mas evaluate natin sa controllable fixed cost. Pag uncontrollable fixed cost, huwag mo i-consider yun sa evaluation ng responsibility centers. Okay? Letter BOY, controllability. 11, controllable costs are, okay, ang definition ng controllable cost, nandun siya sa letter DOG. Costs that are likely to respond to the amount of attention devoted to them by a specified manager. Yung definition ng controllable cost. Tignan din natin class yung ibang choices. DOG na yung sagot for 11. Ha? Letter A, costs that fluctuate in total in response to small changes in the rate of capacity utilization. I think variable cost yan. Ha? BOY naman, costs that will be unaffected by current managerial decisions. Siguro uncontrollable cost, no? Unaffected or irrelevant cost. C, cost that management decides to incur in the current period to enable the company. Discretionary cost naman ang tawag dyan, okay? Sa discretion ni management. But controllable costs, letter D yung sagot natin, dog. 12, the cost item least likely to appear in a performance report based on responsibility accounting for the supervisor in large manufacturing situation is, ano doon yung least likely? O yung uncontrollable fixed cost. Alin dito yan? Materials, no. Repairs, no. Direct labor, no. Dog yung sagot natin. Supervisor salary. Uncontrollable fixed cost yan. Unavoidable fixed cost. Okay? Dog for number 12. Number 13, when used for performance evaluation, periodic internal reports based on responsibility accounting system should not. Okay, alam natin, letter C yung sagot dyan. Include allocated fixed overhead. Bakit? Kasi yung allocated fixed overhead is uncontrollable or unavoidable. So, huwag mo i-consider yan sa evaluation natin. Okay, letter C, sagot dyan. Number 14, the most desirable measure of departmental performance for evaluating the departmental manager is the departmental, let's go to letter DOG, revenues less controllable departmental expenses. So, ano yung mga controllable? Basically, yung variable cost and yung controllable fixed cost. DOG yung sagot natin. Okay? Number 15, the profit figure that is preferred in connection with the analysis of a division or department is A, income before income tax, B, taxable profit, C, net income, D, operating income, E, net income exclusive of fund interest. We know it's operating income. Okay? Operating income, operating income, operating income. Okay? Letter DOG yung sagot natin dyan. Bakit ulit class? Kasi yung interest and taxes generally, walang control dyan si manager. Okay? Well, except dito sa IVA. Sa IVA kasi mina-minus tax yan. Okay? Let's go to number 16. Variance analysis would be appropriate to measure profit center, investment center, cost center, all of the above. Kasi class, again, yung variance analysis, basically, applicable naman sa lahat yan. Okay? Especially dun sa cost center, actual versus standard. Well, yung profit center, meron din kasing component na cost yan. Yung investment center, meron din component na cost. That's why variance analysis actually, pwede siya, applicable siya to all types of responsibility centers. DOG yung number 16. Number 17, ROI is a term often used to express income earned on capital invested in a business. A company's ROI would be increased if, sagot natin dito class, sa number 17 is letter E, yung last item. Tingnan natin ha, ROI, saan yung formula natin? Ito, operating income over assets. Sales remain the same, and expenses were reduced by the same peso amount that total assets decreased. Okay, mag-i-increase doon. No? So tingnan natin, sales remain the same, and expenses were reduced by the same peso amount that total assets decreased. So nag-decrease yung assets mo, okay? And then nag-reduce pa yung expenses. So bumaba yung assets, pag na-reduce yung expenses, tataas yung operating income. Obviously, tumaas yung numerator mo, bumaba yung denominator, obviously mag-i-increase yung ROI natin. Letter E yung sagot natin, okay? Tignan natin yung ibang choices. Letter A, sales decreased by the same peso amount that expenses increased. Tumaas yung sales, tumaas yung expenses, therefore, operating income mo, same lang, walang change yun sa ROI. Boy, sales and expenses increased by the same percentage, o ganun din. And then by the total assets increased, kakamukha lang increase nila, yung change nila, therefore, walang effect sa ROI natin. Pag ganito class, pwedeng sa board exam, kung may time ka, pwede ka mag-assume ng figures. Parang yung ginawa natin kanina. Nag-assume tayo ng figures para ma-check natin, para ma-verify if mag-i-increase or decrease siya. But definitely sa letter E, from the formula lang, tataas yung numerator, bababa yung denominator, alam mo na, tataas yung ROI natin. Okay, so letter C, net profit margin increased by the same percentage as total assets. So ganun din. Okay, so walang change. Sales increased by the same peso that expense increased, wala rin change yan. E yung sagot natin for number 17. Okay, let's go to number 18. A subunit of an organization is evaluated on the basis of ROI. If this subunit sales and expense both increase by 30,000. So yung sales and expenses ay increase ng 30,000. Ano daw mangyayari sa ROI muna? So ROI natin, pag yung sales and expenses mo nag-increase ng 30,000 pareho, walang effects sa operating income natin yan. Wala ring effects sa assets. Therefore, no change for ROI. Okay? Doon naman tayo sa asset turnover. Ano yung asset turnover? Sales over assets. Obviously, tataas daw yung sales mo. Okay? Expenses, wala namang effect dito yan. So, tataas yung asset turnover natin. So, increase. Doon naman tayo sa profit margin. Pag tumaas yung sales, tataas yung sales, okay? Tataas yung, mag-assume tayo ng amount, okay? Sa profit margin. For example, class, originally, 100,000 yung operating income natin. Okay? Sales mo, 500,000. Okay? Ito yung original. 100 over 500 is 20%. Okay? So, assume natin na tataas yung sales natin by 30,000. Therefore, ang numerator mo na 530,000. Alright? And then, yung expenses natin magi-increase by 30,000. Alright? So, class, tama ba pag yung expenses mo and sales mo nag-increase ng 30,000, same lang yung operating income. Ang magbabago lang sa'yo, yung denominator, yung sales. Okay? Kasi yung sales and expenses, mag-offset dito yan. Yung sales mo, from 500, magiging 530. So, 100 divided by 530, ang sagot mo dito, magiging 18.87%. Okay? So, from 20%, nag-assume tayo ng amount, naging 18.87. O, pwede mo gawin sa board exam yan. Mag-assume ka na amount para ma-check mo if no change, increase, or decrease. Okay, so ROI, no change. Asset turnover, increase. And then profit margin, decrease. Letter C yung sagot mo for number 18. Okay? Let's go to number 19. ROI is computed by dividing income by letter C yung sagot dyan. Okay? Assets invested. Okay? Hindi average assets employed. Iba kasi yung employed sa invested. Mas tama yung assets invested. Okay? Invested assets or invested capital. Okay? 20. Profit margin equals income, operating income over sales. Letter A yung sagot mo dyan. Okay? Letter A. 21. The DuPont model measures sa DuPont ROI. Yan. Okay? So ROI, letter boy. So sabi sa DuPont model, yung ROI daw, pwede mo i-break down into two. Asset turnover and profit margin. Okay? So letter boy for number 21. Number 22, the DuPont model measures ROI as affected by letter B, profit margin and asset turnover. So para mag-increase yung ROI natin, increase mo yung asset turnover, increase mo yung profit margin. Okay? Number 23, residual income is, okay, punta tayo sa letter C, income of an investment center less the imputed interest on the invested capital. Okay, letter C yung residual income natin. So basically, mas gusto natin mas mataas yung residual income. Okay, letter C. 24, if a division generates a positive residual income, then the divisions, okay, punta ka sa letter D. Pag daw mataas yung residual income natin, therefore, mas mataas yung operating income natin kaysa sa target income. Ganito kasi class yung residual income. Residual income is equal to actual income minus target income. So, actual minus target. Mas gusto mo na mataas yung actual mo kaysa sa target. Gets? Okay. So, that's why letter dog yung sagot mo dyan. Actual return on investment exceed the division's target return. So, ulitin ko, ito yung actual. Ito naman, kaya siya tinawag na minimum rate of return or target rate of return kasi ito yung target income mo. So, actual minus target, ang tawag mo doon, residual income. Okay? Letter dog. 25, indirect costs should not be allocated for all of the following reasons, or should not be allocated except, okay, so motivate managers, determine full cost of the product, okay, motivate general administration and compare alternatives. Okay, so sagot mo dito class is letter C, motivate general administration. So ulitin ko, yung indirect cost kasi class, ang mangyayari dyan, yung general administration kasi cost center yan. Okay, so cost center yan. So wag mo i-allocate yung indirect cost kasi wala naman silang control over yung uncontrollable cost. Okay, which is, an example is indirect cost. Okay? So, ayan. Letter C tayo for number 25. Alright. Sige, so let's have a short break before we continue answering yung problems kasi different concepts na yun. And very quick break lang.